Hey, Jeff, I'm really glad that you could join me. We had it was a few weeks ago we talked. I remember seeing you on the CNBC, the Business Report. And so that's why I asked Lena to reach out because we're going into 2024. When this podcast comes out, we're going to be in 2024, just at the beginning. And there's a lot going on.
Oh my goodness, isn't there? Yeah.
Oh God. And the business owners we work with are private business owners. And this year, 2023, they've been kind of holding back, wait and see. There's been interest rates going up and employment, labor and stuff. Then elections out there. So when I started thinking about the year that's coming, I knew that I could reach out to you to get a perspective that's balance, clarity, some things like that. So this is the perfect time to be doing this. But before we get into what to expect next year, I'm really interested in you. Your background. What happened in your life to bring you into what you do now?
Well, I'll give you the condensed version.
Yeah.
So I started in the financial business in 1987, and I actually started as an underwriter of all things. And it was a great job, incredible experience to get to know the financial industry and so forth, but a horrible job fit. I hated going to work every day. So I ended up moving from there into the wholesaling space and ended up buying a firm. I owned my own registered investment advisor until 2001 when I sold that, and ended up working for Merrill Lynch for 11 years, managing the western two-thirds of the country for their higher end advice and guidance channel, and decided to retire in 2011 and started speaking on the Washington Update. I've always been a political junkie. I have an accounting degree. I'm not an accountant, but I have an accounting degree. So it was just this gap in the financial advice industry between what's happening in Washington, D.C., and what that means for your clients and preparing clients 6 months, 18 months down the road. And so I approach it in a very nonpartisan way. And it's just been fantastic. I've traveled the world delivering the Washington Update, and it's just been a great experience.
Yeah, in the Washington Update, that's your company, right? You started that. Okay, so
Well, actually, Andy Friedman started. He was a tax partner for Covington Burling in Washington, D.C. And then I quickly joined him. He started in 2008. And the real missing piece for Andy is he understood Washington, he understood taxes, but he didn't understand the financial industry. So when I joined him in 2011, those two things came together and really took the Washington Update to where it is now.
Yeah, that covers some ground. A lot has happened, since then. So that's really good. And along the way, did you meet anybody, get married, have kids?
Well, I got married a long time ago. Actually, I'm having my 30th wedding anniversary next summer.
Wow.
And we have two wonderful daughters. One lives in Boston and one's finishing up college this year. And so we'll see where she ends up. But that will probably drive where my wife and I end up eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. So you never know. You're in and out of DC. You don't live here, kind of stuff. But you never know.
Right.
Kids, grandkids, kind of stuff. So
yeah. And with my career and the internet and everything else, podcasts and the like, I can do my job everywhere. But 95% of my income is actually working with business owners, management teams, and so forth, trying to understand what's happening in Washington, primarily through a financial lens, but also through a legislative and regulatory lens.
Yeah. When did you start speaking? I've seen you on stage, right? Where you got a certain presence about you. When did that happen and why? Because speaking is like the number one, people fear the fear of speaking, fear of death. Right.
Yeah. So well, I will invert that. I don't know why. I just never really been nervous to get up in front of people and speak. It was a part of my job when I was with Merrill Lynch and even before. And so it was a natural transition for me. Other than the very first time I delivered the Washington Update, I remember I was standing off the side of the stage and they were introducing me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've gambled my entire family's future on the next hour.
Sometimes you throw the dice, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what was that like? I mean, so it's a natural thing, and why speak? I mean, you could do so many other things in life.
I wanted to be my own boss. I had my own firm before I went to work for Merrill Lynch, so I had that 11 years of corporate experience, and I was ready to get back into an entrepreneurial space. I just missed having the ability to control my own destiny. all of that falling on me. I didn't like the idea that 75, 80% of my annual compensation was a 100% discretionary bonus. And even during some of my best years, I didn't make the most. It just didn't
Yeah.
make sense. And so I really wanted to get back to a space where I controlled my own destiny. And it's been fabulous.
Yeah, you sound almost like in my book, I talk about three different business people. One is the craft person. They really are in for the better mousetrap. They want to forget about the mice. Let's just keep making the better mousetrap. And that most business owners happen to be that category. Then on the flip side, mountain climbers. I want the $1 billion unicorn, right? And out there with PE investors. And then roughly that's 2%. Then roughly a quarter freedom fighters. It's usually like a freedom fighter. I want a better life. I want to create a good solution, work with the people I care about, and get compensated the way I need to for what I need in life. Is that you?
That certainly is the category I fall in. A friend of mine long time ago, when I bought my registered investment advisor, he said, an entrepreneur is someone who would rather work 80 hours for themselves than 40 hours for somebody else. And that's certainly true. And I can say after doing this for 12, 13 years now, I love getting out of bed every day. I love going to the airport and flying to wherever I'm presenting that day. And it's still just a joy. And so I have zero regrets leaving that space. Grateful for the experience, but definitely glad to have moved on.
Yeah. Can we tell everybody the secret that you actually know how to fly planes?
Yeah. So my dad was an Air Force pilot and Air National Guard pilot, actually. And so I flew with him when I was a kid. A lot of guys talk about going to a ball game with their dad or whatever the case is. I didn't have that experience. My dad really wasn't a sports guy, but he did go fly. And so I go fly with him. And so that was one of my 4 things I was looking for when I was looking to leave the corporate space, was to get back in the cockpit. So I originally got my pilot's license back in the early 1990s, but I wanted to get back in the cockpit and progress up through an aircraft that I could actually use for business. And so I've been fortunate enough to do that. So generally I fly myself to my events, and it's just been a game changer as far as time and space and my ability to execute for clients' needs wherever they want me that day.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. You can almost teleport to wherever you want to be. You know how to go through the security lines and all the delays. I mean, you need to be in Phoenix, you're in Phoenix. You need to be you're in New York, kind of stuff. And I know a little more involved than that. I'm a former Army guy, behavioral scientist in Army, but all my analogies in business are flight. Because hey, before we go doing the work, destination. What is that vivid vision of your future self? Who are you? What's your purpose? Then how do we align the business to that? And then flight plan, financial flight plan. Oh my God. Then that makes way more sense than anything more basic like a road trip, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting you point that out, because there is a tremendous overlap when you think about planning through a flight, but also planning for your financial future. And just that financial planning process and projecting yourself out there. What might I encounter? What are some things I haven't thought about? What happens if this happens? What's my backup plan? So there are a lot of analogies there, and I think that's apropos.
Yeah, in flight, you're really good about the checklist, right? So the flight is the safest mode of travel. So if you learn something, you update the checklist. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, that's a good good business practices. Good. If only, right? We could do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So interesting. Where were you born? Was it DC area or somewhere else?
I was born in DC. At the time, my dad was flying with the Air National Guard, but also working at NASA. And so we lived there in the DC area, and then relocated to the Midwest when I was young. So I'm a Midwest guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. So you got that Midwest thing. I'm from Houston, but I love the DC area. There's so much going on. If you want to talk any association, that kind of stuff, any country, you kind of go out and talk to somebody. If I got a blind spot, help me see stuff. So really cool. Okay, so when this video comes out, the podcast comes out, we're going to be in 2024. What are you seeing? As you look out, what are you looking at?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm talking about politics, and 2024 is an election year, and the election is going to have huge impact on tax reform. So, right now, what I'm educating audiences on is what direction I think is going to happen politically. What does that power landscape look after the election, and how that influences tax reform, and what we can anticipate for a new tax code. Some tax changes maybe as early as 2025, but significant changes in 2026. So, that's kind of the agenda of the presentation right now.
Well, take us through the election. What do you expect to play out? Who's going to run? Let's put some markers out there and see what comes in.
Really put me on the spot. Well, at the presidential level, 2023 actually was the exciting year because we had all these different mixes and variables of what might happen at the presidential level. Actually, now that we're here at the end of December, that race really has narrowed significantly. And it does appear it's going to be a rerun of 2020 with Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Kind of what I'm calling a default election. But we need to understand how we elect a president. It really is a 45-45-10 type of electoral environment we live in. 45% of people are automatically going to vote Democrat, 45% are automatically going to vote Republican. So, really, the only people that we're going to spend billions of dollars on are that 10% that may switch one way or the other. And I think I'm being generous at 10%. But as a default election, if you read the polls, the mass majority of us don't want either of Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. They're both flawed in many different ways. Joe Biden obviously has the issue that he's just now starting to understand that this election is not about Bidenomics. It's about the economy of my wallet as a voter. And you're starting to hear some subtle changes in the way he's talking about the economy, relating it more as the economy of the wallet of the voter. And I think that will give him some better traction on the economic issues heading into 2024. I do anticipate economically the economy continuing to improve through 2024, so that will be a tailwind. But there are some significant headwinds for him as well. The tax indictment on Hunter Biden guarantees that that will be an issue throughout 2024 and be a weight around his neck. In addition to that is the fact of something he can control, his age, right? But Donald Trump's not that much younger. Now, Donald Trump has his challenges as well. His poll numbers aren't that much better than Biden's. Biden's are horrible. We understand that. But the real question for Donald Trump is, does the cumulative weight of all of these legal challenges finally start to weigh him down in the polls? Not in the nomination process. He seems to have that fairly well locked in. It really is around the general election. So we won't know until we finally get those two final candidates, at least as a presumptive nominees with the designated electors, in order to start judging those head-to-head polls. But what we do know is who will elect the next president. It's the great residents of Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, the same states that elected the president in 2020. So when I want to get a read on what's happening at the presidential level, I really look to the head-to-head polls in those four states. And I think that gives us some pretty good ideas to the presidential direction. The other wild card in 2024, of course, will be third-party candidates. Jill Stein is running as a Green Party candidate. She clearly will take votes from Joe Biden. Cornel West is running as an independent candidate. He will take votes away from Joe Biden. RFK Jr. is running as an independent, and he's kind of pulling from both at this point. So that's kind of a wild card yet to be determined. But what I'm really focused on is what's happening with that no labels movement. If you're not familiar with it, No Labels is a group of moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans saying we don't want a Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, a rerun, if you will. So if it is Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, they say they're going to put forward a split ticket with one Democrat and one Republican on the same ticket. And that could really do some very interesting things just by the nature of the way we elect a president. Most people assume when they go to the polls in November and they pull that lever that they're voting for the president. But that's not really what's happening. What you're doing is you're voting for electoral representation in the Electoral College. And the Constitution is very clear. You have to have 270 electoral votes to be the president. If you get 269 and you're in the lead, good for you, you're not the president. Mm-hmm. So if we have a viable third-party candidate that could peel off 10 to maybe 20%, at most 20, of the Electoral College, which has never happened in the in modern U.S. politics, then you could end up in a situation that no candidate gets 270, and then it goes to the House of Representatives. And there, the election would be determined by the number of state delegations, not who has the majority of the House after the 2024 election. And I fully anticipate that the Republicans will maintain their state delegation lead in the House. And so you would naturally think it would be a Republican president.
Now that's the whole thing is interesting, right? Where you got the third party, the no label, and then how it plays out in ways that we haven't seen. It'd be easy in that environment to make all kinds of claims, right? Like we're making up the rules as we go along, kind of stuff, because we haven't experienced.
Yeah, the good news is the Constitution is pretty clear as to how the process works. It doesn't mean people won't file challenges and things like that. I guarantee it will happen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have a roadmap to follow. Going back to our flight plan, we have a flight plan to follow. And so even if that does happen, that no candidate reaches that 270 electoral vote level, we know what to do at that point. Now, whether the country accepts that or not, that's a different question. And that will be an interesting part of the 2024 election season.
Yes, wait and see, because some new stuff coming in. So what do you expect? There's taxes, inflation, interest, because interest rates really slow down a lot of markets, construction, that kind of thing, house buying. Yeah. What do you expect in kind of those economic indicators?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I anticipate that inflation will continue to drip down as it is. It's always about that last mile, right? When you're running a marathon, it's the last mile that's the most difficult and hardest. Well, the inflation's the same way. Getting from 3 to 2 is infinitely more difficult than getting from 6 to 5. And so we still have some more room to go there. That's why I look at how Jerome Powell came about being the Fed chair. And if you look at his history, he lived through the 2008 financial crisis where the Fed acted quickly to reduce rates. And what did we end up with? We ended up with a double dip recession. And so I think that's trained him and a lot of the other governors to say, let's just take a cautious hold on interest rates until we're 110% convinced that we've drained that inflation out, and then they'll start lowering rates. So I'm kind of a fan, not a fan, I kind of believe the Fed will go higher for longer. And we've heard that, but that time frame is being redefined. Some people in the market now are anticipating first quarter reduction in interest rates, and I'm just not seeing that in the numbers right now. I still think it's later in 2024. But we'll see what those numbers come in when they come in. We got obviously some good news in December, but they're still, I think, in that holding pattern. My 2 cents. So that's interest rates. The economy itself, again, I think it will continue to improve. We've shown tremendous resilience with jobs, with incomes, and so forth. And I don't see anything on the horizon that would upset that. I think the biggest threat to the U.S. economy right now would be a widespread spread of either Russia-Ukraine war, or the Israeli-Hamas situation. We start seeing Houthis get much more involved. We see Syria get involved with the Hezbollah. We see the United States participating even more so, not just taking defensive measures, fending off the attacks, but actually being proactive. That could be a game changer in the economy and spook it at this point.
Yeah, that could be an upset if something really starts to roll out in the Middle East or Europe. I mean, the wild card. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that translates to the markets, right? We know there's about $4 trillion sitting on the sidelines right now in cash, just waiting for an opportunity to invest. So if we continue to gain confidence with the economy, I think the market could be fantastic next year without some of these other variables, right? So we'll see.
At some point, so we got like coming into this year, it really slowed down. Coming into 2023, to be clear, it really slowed down business activity. The B2B clients we work with, wait and see, let things shake out. At some point, you got to think that business owners are going to, even if things are murky and there's uncertainty with the election and global war, things become more of a regional, not global war, but more regional. At some point, we got to go, right? Let's buy the equipment. Let's build that, build what we build and live the life. the reason why we went into business. Let's live that
Yeah.
life. I mean, kind of pent up demand kind of situation. Are we
Yeah.
there yet where businesses are going to start investing that 14 trillion, or is it kind of?
Yeah. I'm sensing that, as I talk to business leaders and owners around the country, as I'm traveling around doing my presentation, I get the sense that they're pushing the capacity with the building, the materials, the equipment they have right now. And there is a breakout point where all of a sudden we'll trip over that point, and then there'll be the consumption side, right? We'll have to buy more equipment. We'll have to expand our space, those types of things. And so I think we're closer to that point than we were certainly 6 months ago. And the question is, okay, does that add inflationary pressure then and can perpetuate these higher interest rates for even a little bit longer? It's always a give and take in that situation.
Yeah, really is interesting. I mean, it's never, you go into business, it's never right. You're navigating, you're responsible for people. It's a lot. What are your thoughts about under scenarios A and B, Republican president versus Democrat? I mean, like from a tax situation, how much of our money are we paying out?
Well, then, if we're going to talk about tax, we have to go figure out what's going to happen in the congressional elections. So let's talk about those real quickly, and then I think that will feed into that discussion. At the Senate level, the map completely flips from 2022. The 2022 map favored the Democrats, but the map heavily favors the Republicans. There are 35 members of the class of 2024 for the Senate. Remember, we elect about 1/3 of the Senate every 2 years. So every class is unique. And what's unique about the class of 2024 is that there are 3 Democrats running in states that Trump won in 2020. So you think those are easy pickups for Republicans. But there are also 5 states that Biden barely won in 2020. So those are pickup opportunities for the Republicans as well. And there's not even one Republican running in a state that Biden won in 2020. So I think it's a foregone conclusion right now. Republicans will take back the majority of the Senate after the 2024 election, even though they may try their best not to short circuit themselves. But I think they're likely to take back that majority, because right now they only need to win 1 net seat if they gain the White House, or 2 if they don't. So it's just not a high hurdle for them. So I do think the Republicans will take back control of the Senate after 2024.
Okay.
The House of Representatives, on the other hand, that's always a little bit murkier because we're talking about local issues and federal issues and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do know is that Republicans significantly underperformed in 2022. And the question is, do they right that ship at this point heading into 2024? There are, 18 Democrats running, 18 Republicans running in House districts that Biden won in 2020, but only 5 Democrats running in Trump won districts. Okay. So numerically, Democrats actually have the advantage in the House of Representatives. And again, the margin for majority is so small for the Democrats to take that back that I think right now they have the odds are that they'll take back the House at this point, especially when you take into account that a significant number of states will actually be using brand new House district maps in 2024. And those new maps in aggregate actually benefits the Democrats. So they certainly have tailwinds. I'm not prepared to predict the House, but they certainly have a pretty strong tailwind to taking back control of the House after 2024. So if that happens, we'll have a split power scenario, right? So no one party is going to be able to ram through a tax reform bill the way they want it. But if they did, Republicans say they just want to extend the Build Back Better taxes. At the same time, Democrats want to go back to the Build Back Better tax changes they talked about last year if they swept. So I don't think either of those things are going to happen. It's going to have to be some combination of the two. Okay. Here's the challenge, though. In any negotiation scenario, both parties have to have a reason to be sitting at the table, or the negotiation won't work, right? Mm-hmm. And Democrats have been very clear. They want higher income people to pay a larger share of a larger tax burden. In other words, increasing the progressivity of the U.S. tax code. Well, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it just expires at the end of 2025 by law. Just the way the law was written, it goes away. And we go back to the old tax code indexed forward. Well, what would that mean? That would mean about, on average, a 12% increase in taxes for anyone earning over, say, $200,000 a year, i.e., higher income people paying a higher share of a larger tax burden, somewhat accomplishing exactly what the Democrats want. So they aren't really incented to sit at that
At the
negotiating
table.
table and work, work out anything grand or vastly different. Especially when you consider the Democrats could just sit back and say, "Hey, don't blame us. Taxes went up. Blame the Republicans. They wrote the law, not us."
Yeah,
So you don't
that's
really have an equal negotiating partner in this scenario, unfortunately, for all of us. Yeah.
they can literally just let the clock run out, and then they can point
Yeah.
fingers and that kind of stuff, and versus
And blame the Republicans. Yeah, they'll have to look like they're participating.
yeah
They'll have to look like they're negotiating in good faith. But at the end of the day, if it just expires, they accomplish 80% of what they wanted.
yeah
So what I'm reminding audiences now, right now, is, well, what does that tax code look like in 2026 if it just expires? Will it be a return of the 39.6% highest marginal tax bracket? The doubling of the standard deduction that allowed the mass majority of Americans to no longer have to itemize, that goes away.
yeah
So CPAs will be happy, right? They'll have more business again. But one thing that I think, or a couple of things I think are most relevant for this audience, is the doubling of the estate exemption would go away. So we have dropped from that roughly 13 million we enjoyed in 2023, more than 13 million next year, goes down to 6 million or so.
mm,
And so that's a huge decrease in that estate exemption, and really challenges business owners to maintain the value of that business through multiple generations. In addition to that, the 199A 20% deduction for pass-through business owners like ourselves, that goes away. Now, one thing we gain back, though, is the uncapped state and local tax cap. Right now, we're at 10,000 that we can write off. It would go back to uncapped, which again is something the Democrats actually want to have happen because they tend to be in higher tax states. The only permanent tax code change the Republicans made was the lower corporate tax rate of 21%. So even if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act does go away, that 21% rate would still be in play.
yeah
I also like to remind audiences that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did not impact capital gains. So there are no changes to the capital gains taxation rules.
so how do you there's one thing, like there's tax compliance, like in the business and that kind of stuff, there's tax strategy, but on the personal side, I mean,
Mhm.
how do you help somebody really optimize their tax situation across, when they're earning money versus the use period? I mean, how should they approach that?
Well, the mass majority of people I talk to are pass-through business owners. Um, and so, not dissimilar to me, we have a lot of strategies that we can employ to manage that exposure, whether it be qualified plans or accelerated depreciation or any things like that we can employ within our tax planning. The people I really feel sorry for are W-2 employees. They have no control. They just have to pay whatever the IRS tells them they owe. They don't have a lot of strategies beyond their 401k and the like. So it really is unique to the individual, and a lot of these things get into specific industries around oil and gas or retail, or,
Yeah,
things like that.
I find, for me, growth, CFO, business building, financial freedom kind of stuff, and really around the person. How do we build the person when they have a life of purpose? What's their vivid vision of the future self? CPA, all that kind of stuff. Let me tell you about the topic that my eyes roll over real fast in, and it's taxes. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, so it really is an area to
Yeah.
tap into an expert, because there's a lot of things unique to you as an individual that
Mhm.
does, that's not generic. And that's, if you have some wealth, if you want multi-generational wealth, if you have a business,
Mhm.
really to do some forethought about how to set that up with your tax, not
Yeah.
just tax compliant. Tax compliant keeps you out of the orange jumpsuit, but more, tax strategy. And the more we
Right.
do that early, and it's in line with your flight plan on where you want to end up in your life, like what do you want to do with your time and time and money kind of thing. Oh my God. I mean,
So obviously we can't solve the world's problems on a podcast. It's one-way communication with your audience. But what I would tell you is what I tell audiences: estate taxes are completely optional. You have strategies to avoid estate taxes, but you have to proactively take advantage of them. And now's the time to do it. We have 3 tax years left under the code we know now that we can take advantage of some very generous estate tax strategies that we have available to us.
Yeah.
So get with your CPA, get with your financial advisor, make sure you're taking advantage of those estate planning strategies today while we know what that code is, because we don't really know for sure what that code will be starting in 2026.
Yeah.
But then second of all, for more general audience who are just trying to build wealth and prepare themselves for a 30, 35-year retirement, healthy and happy and so forth, is my strategy is always to have 3 buckets of money when I retire. I want a bucket of equal buckets: taxable, tax-free, and tax-deferred. That gives me the ability to manipulate the tax code for my lifestyle rather than the tax code dictating to me what my lifestyle will be. If taxes are high this year, I'm going to take income from munis. I'm going to take income out of Roth. And then next year, tax rates are low. That's when I'll take my taxable income. But it just gives you freedom, just like we were talking about entrepreneuring, because you want to have that freedom and so forth. Same thing with your financial investments. One of my biggest fears for the quote unquote average American is that 100% of their savings is in one place, IRA, 401k, meaning they have one tax strategy when they retire. And that is a horrible way. It means you're trusting the federal government and the tax code for your lifestyle. And I'm not going to put myself in that position. And you do that through what's called asset location. Your audience, I'm sure, is very familiar with asset allocation, mix of stocks, bonds, cash, real estate, and the like. Those pie charts that are on our financial statements every month. That's asset allocation. That's there to manage market volatility. But what asset location strategies do is manage tax volatility. As when those two things are working in concert, that you end up with the nice, smooth, growing ride in retirement that we all want.
You're playing chess. You can lean in based on what's going on. So let's bring this back to business owner, because I certainly don't. I live within the society I live in, the tax environment. I like playing chess the way you're saying things. I can move my different buckets based on what's going on. It's worthwhile. So from a business owner standpoint, what on some level, I want a positive flight plan. I want the positive destination, something that really excites me, aligns with what I was born to do, kind of stuff. And I want to do it safe. I want some confidence that as we build a business, make investments, we're buying equipment, we're hiring people, we're going into new markets, that I'm gonna have enough cash, because cash runs out. We do an early landing, right? That kind of stuff. What are your thoughts like for the things that we actually control? You're a business owner. What are the things that you think? How do you create that positive future for yourself?
Well, it boils down to nothing more than relationships in my business model, in showing up when I'm supposed to show up, doing a good job for my clients. So I'm so blessed. I have the easiest business model in the world. You hire me, I show up, I speak, I get paid. And your audience gets the Washington update. So it's really simple business model, and I love that because I have enough complexity worrying about tax policy and government and politics and the like. But for the business owner, when I'm thinking through that flight plan, and you made the comment, you have to have that destination in mind and know where you're going. That's a conversation. If they're married, between the spouses, with their financial advisor, because it's amazing how many times, and this is true of business owners, I'm going to call us all out on this. We tend to be a little more hard charging, a little more directed in our thinking, and we may have the idea of what retirement is, but that may not match what the spouse's idea is. And so the first step is getting on the same page and figuring out where the heck we're going. And once you do that, then you can start backfilling in. And for the majority of us, our businesses are our largest asset. But what do you want to have? What do you want? Is that a perpetuating through the generation type scenario? Mine's not really. My daughters don't seem to have an interest in going into the speaking world and living my lifestyle. So it'll probably die with me, or I'll bring in a junior member at some point, transition out, that type of thing. So we have to work through the business side. That's always very complicated because you are taking some Hail Mary, throwing some Hail Marys there to try to figure that out.
Yeah.
But on the financial side, it gets a lot easier because once we know the nature of the business, the direction of the business, the way you want to manage that or dispose of or perpetuate that business, then we can backfill in with the cash and say, okay, how do we allocate our monies so that it enables us to actually take advantage of the strategy we want to achieve with that business. And so it gets very personal very quickly when you sit with business owners and you really work through that detailed of information.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Most of us don't do that calibration, that, you know, that destination we're going to with our spouse, our partner. We don't really, well, what are the different scenarios? What is our bucket list?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
How close
I see it every day.
Yeah.
I see it every day. There's just a complete mismatch. My parents, who were the most planning oriented people in the world, and I think that's where I kind of got that natural tendency as a planner.
Yeah.
When mom had a very specific vision of retirement and dad had one, mom retired 5 years earlier than dad, but when dad retired, he retired on Friday and went back to work volunteering for the same firm on Monday. Well, that wasn't mom's plan. She wanted to go travel. She wanted, yeah. And shame on me. I guess I didn't have a deep enough conversation with them to help them through that. But it was a real challenge between mom and dad for a while. And I see it every day with business owners and even executives, your highest income salespeople, whatever the case is. Yeah. It's just that personality that we're not listening as much as we are, driving.
that creates real pain, right? When hey, I worked all these years, I want to go travel now. Well, wait a minute, I want to go work with these other companies over here.
Yeah.
Or bring in. I'm a freedom fighter now. I'm liberated from the big company. I want to go do things.
Right.
But I mean, those are just diametric ways of looking at the world.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I are going through that at this point. I'm 57. I don't plan on retiring anytime soon. But I travel for a living. I'm on the road 200 days a year.
Yeah.
And so is it my retirement idea to start traveling even more? I'm not sure. So we're still working through that ourselves. Our interim plan is that my wife is going to, now that we're empty nesters, is going to start traveling more with me and extend my stays when I go to these great meetings that business owners put on that I get to attend, and we're going to transition kind of that way and see how that works.
Go early, stay late. So
yes.
Let me kind of translate, mirror this back. So that vivid vision of your future self, collaborating with the partners, your bucket list. Maybe are you thinking about developing, family members and non-family members, 3 generations down, so multi-generational? Where does that fit? Then you start getting pretty clear. What financial resources do we need? How do we do this where we're tax optimized? And how do we do it where it's safe, like liability protection? So if somebody has a slip and fall on your property, you're not like starting over kind of stuff. For us on the growth CFO side, it makes it if we know this on a person and we're really connected and we're working through those things, it becomes real clear on how to build a business. I mean, how much household income do you need today to be financially free, money for the expected, unexpected? And how much value do you need in your business so that you get that second payday and you're literally liberated? And then build a business where the business owners are working to their purpose, and build it when they pass the torch, they're not tied up with a 3-year earnout where you're back to being an employee. That's not good. But if you have some view of this, it starts to become a smoother flight. I mean, how much fuel do you need?
Well, you hit a great point. There is no one solution. Right? It takes multiple players to make that team work, but someone has to be the quarterback. And sometimes the business owner is not the right person to be that quarterback. And so how do you bring the team together? How do you structure that in some areas that I've worked with so many entrepreneurs that, by God, they know their business cold. They know every single thing about their industry and everything else. But when you start talking about some of these other things, they just haven't spent any time there. They haven't had the luxury of it. And so you have to be able to assemble a team, and you have to have that trusted source to be your, I want to call it a backup quarterback.
Yeah. They
can step in and say, hey, we have a blind spot here. Maybe it's liability protection, or it's wealth transfer, or what is the succession plan? Yeah. All those things come into play, and everybody needs that person on the shoulder tapping them saying, hey, you're missing the point over here.
It really is. The puzzle, there's lots of pieces to it, and they're complicated, and more or less we get one shot at this. We don't have time for trial and error. So having the right success team, it makes a huge difference. Huge difference. So
absolutely right.
Yeah, is there so this is the stuff that we control as business owners. It's good to know what's going on. If the tax law goes left or right, I don't control that, but I do control how I'm set up in either environment to do well. Some things are going up, I need to do well in that environment. Some things are going down, I can do well in that environment. So all the clarity. So from a what do you do at the Washington update for business owners? Like when should they call you?
Well, I see myself as a part of one of those team members when it comes to strategic thinking around the business, looking 12 months, 18 months, 2 years down the road from a political perspective. What does that reality look like? Again, from a tax, a legislation, a regulatory environment, but it's all very nonpartisan and political environment, right? So, but it's very nonpartisan. I do a lot of retreats for businesses where you take your key people, and I'm just a part of that program. I come in, I deliver my presentation, and then we have some great dialogue back and forth and so forth. But it really is unique to the individual. I pride myself that you're the client. You tell me what you're trying to accomplish, and I'll tell you if I can fit into that. But I have a lot of corporate clients that they just bring me in for employee awareness because they can trust that I'm not going to be political on either end. Oh, I'm going to point fingers, but I'm going to point fingers at everybody because they all deserve it from time to time.
It's leadership, right? Anybody in any role, there's plenty of things. And Jeff, I really do appreciate it about you. I mean, from listening to you back years ago. So you can come in. You're the expertise that most companies aren't going to have internal. You have a viewpoint that can enlarge.
I wouldn't think so. Yeah, until they're a much larger organization that maybe they're tapping into a government affairs office in Washington, D.C. or something like that. Then I would not think that they would necessarily have those resources. But, we know 98% of businesses don't have that representation in Washington. So I can kind of bring some of that thought down into the organization.
Yeah, so you can come in for that. You can come in if there's all of us are part of groups. I mean, there could be a speaking event to help make people more aware of the environment that we're in. Is there anything else? I mean, you're public.
You know what's interesting? I do have some corporate clients or business owner clients that bring me in for their employees, like I said, for awareness. But let's say they're very active in, I don't know, Lions Club or Chamber of Commerce within their community. I'll go speak to the Chamber of Commerce as well. So hosted or sponsored by that firm. And I don't charge any more for that. It's just a value add that I bring in and just build goodwill within the community. And that's been very successful. I also have done a lot of nonprofit work where they have their big gala or whatever the case is. Believe it or not, they want somebody to come in and talk about Washington, especially during election year. I'll come in and I'll do that for nonprofits, and then they tag on to that. And obviously I'll talk about charitable giving as a part of your tax planning.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Bringing in the right expert, clarity, making better decisions for scenario A, B, and C, and then it starts to get fun, right? Your business is going to be okay. Pretty much, not to the extreme, but pretty much no matter what happens, you can play things out, make sure team members are doing well. What's the best way for people to get hold of you?
The best way would be through the website, thewashingtonupdate.com. Again, it's thewashingtonupdate.com. That's probably the easiest way. There's a book now button on there if you just want to start conversing with me about a potential event. They can also look me up on any of the social media and message me there. But my preference would be through the website. And there's a toll-free number on the website as well.
Yeah. So great, Jeff. Hey, thank you for talking with me. And I know it's difficult. I'm a guy from Texas. It's hard to get stuff in here. But I feel like I'm a little bit more aware, maybe a lot, right?
Good.
It'll help us think about our business and what we do. So Jeff, sincerely, thank you for jumping in with me and getting the word out.
Oh, it's always great visiting with you, Kirk. I appreciate the opportunity.
Right, and I'll see the audience soon, and Jeff, I hope to see you very soon as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.